Alright guys, let's hop into it. The Ball Lightning Sorceress build for the Abattoir of Zir. With the most recent update that we got now, it's more likely that you can actually achieve the glyph level 50. And we have made some adjustments to the build to actually squeeze out even more damage, as that is the primary bottleneck for any sort of build, for the most part with the Abattoir of Zir. But let's go ahead and hop into it. So, starting right off, in terms of the skills, there are some optional changes for the Perma-Stun Ball Lightning build. Now, just as a heads up to keep it realistic, you can permanently stun things. You will see it in the gameplay. However, there is at some point a break point where the enemy has been stunned for too long of a duration, and then they will become unstoppable. But you'll see in the gameplay, you can melt anything that's pretty much under the Sigil 10 and under. As long as you happen to have the decent amount of DPS in the higher rolls, you can absolutely just perma-stun things. And you're going to try to do this to get your glyph leveled up, and that's where the build will essentially excel. So, starting right off in terms of the skills, we're running Ball Lightning, we're running Frost Nova, then we've got the Flame Shield, the Ice Armor, Blizzard, and Teleport. Now, if you do want to swap up some things, Frost Nova can be swapped out for Unstable Currents if you are interested in pushing even higher. I'm talking about basically doing anything past Sigil 10 for Sorceress. It can be advised to go ahead and swap that. But Frost Nova does give you a lot more survivability, and you can teleport into a big group, and you can activate Frost Nova. There's also another change if you want to. Instead of running on your chest armor, running, let's say, Disobedience and a bunch of defensive stats, you can try to go for Rhymet of the Infinite to try to go and get those really nice pixel pulls so you can bring everything and actually maybe get some damage. It is a very risky move as it does lead to a lot of deaths, but in theory, it can add more damage. But as far as the helmet goes, Harlequin Crest, aka Shaco, is still one of the best items in the game. And then Disobedience over here for our chest piece, or Rhymet. Again, this is only for people that really want to push the character to its limits, but there is RNG. Sometimes you just pull the wrong thing, and it is a little bit harder. My suggestion would be to watch when your Flame Shield actually is going to be up, and then you can go ahead and make these larger pulls against elites. Then Fist of Fate is excellent just to give you extra resource, as well as give you technically a lot of damage. However, if you do want to run some gloves that happen to have some attack speed on it, crit chance, that's totally fine because we run Ball Lightning, so there isn't a huge need to get plus ranks to Ball Lightning here because it's impossible. You have to get it in your pants. So ideally, you can run Fist of Fate if it happens to roll 280 or higher, but if not, you can opt to go ahead and run a normal rare pair of gloves, and then after that, you can also throw in, like, say, the accelerating aspect or whatever offensive aspect that you want to go ahead and throw on. And then for the pants, I'm running the Ever-Living aspect as well, and I just really like getting that ranks of Ball Lightning. If you want to play Tybalt and Rhymet, that would be heavily in the offensive department, and if you are able to permanently stun things and kill them fast enough, it is a way that you can actually win. But you have to keep in mind, anything that's shooting you off screen that isn't permanently stunned, well, you have that risk of just instantly losing the Sigil. And then we're running Esu's Heirloom. If you happen to run a pair of gloves that do have crit, you can also swap this out for the Penitent Greaves, as you can get some huge damage out of swapping to actually just make the enemy shield, especially if you want to combo with Rhymet. But you need to make sure that your rolls are almost perfect on every single thing, because you do want to get that 100% crit. That would be getting extra crit on your ring, as well as making sure Sanguine Brace is actually up, because you'll get 60 with this, and then by default you get about 15 because you get default 5, and with enough dexterity it can be pushed. You just have to get almost perfectly rolled pieces of gear, and then you could squeeze out even more damage. Keep in mind, Esu's already has crit strike damage, but being able to have Penitent Greaves is an X multiplicative versus the additive on Esu's. So this is really pushing it for the min-maxed here. And then we're running Aspect of Ancient Flame over here, and then we've got the Elementalist aspect in our amulet. Must be in the amulet, that's the important thing here. Then Recharging aspect so we don't run out of mana, and then Talrasha's Loop because it's one of the best things in the game. And then we also have the Gravitational aspect in our offhand, and especially getting that lucky hit chance to restore primary resource. And then for the enchantments, we are running Fire Bolt as well as Chain Lightning. So no real big differences here, but I mentioned a bunch of the things that you can do if you are interested in maybe going min-max, pushing about 15 at the moment of me making this video. It's kind of the limit on what I've seen with the Sorceress. Barbarian is still kind of be one of the top kings in terms of pushing as of right now. And then as far as the gems go, we have the Emerald, the Ruby, and then Skulls. If you need to put in one diamond, you can do it, but I've made the build as far as the Paragon build to be able to pretty much get all your resistances capped out without requiring you to actually put any investment into it. It depends on the item power of your amulet as well as your rings, because those give you extra resistances. You may need to throw in like 1 diamond, but for the most part, you should be a-okay on resistances. You don't need to put in like several diamonds or other gems here. You can usually fit in at least 2 skulls to give you extra armor here. And then as far as the Vampiric Powers, Ravenous, Prey on the Weak, Infection, and if you're really trying to push, if you already reached the 100% crit threshold, then if you want to swap off Sanguine Brace for even more damage, you can run Domination, because again, that's basically the bottleneck that you'll have with this build in terms of pushing. That's pretty much for any build in general. Sorceress is pretty much one of the stronger builds in the game that can try to push a little bit higher than the other classes, with the exception of Barbarian. Barbarian is still probably number 1 in terms of pushing, but Sorceress is definitely going to be, I would say, in the number 2 spot. So as far as the skill tree, nothing has actually changed in here as far as the update. Pretty much it's already set up to min-max. However, if you happen to have resistances, if you want to swap off Potent Warning and run Glass Cannon, it is optional. It's a little bit more risky, but if you're running Rhymet and you are permanently stunning things, and as you guys have seen in the gameplay, we can permanently stun everything. Again, you have about 5 seconds. There's another great video, and I'll link it down below. I'm not sure if it's going to have any changes in the higher tiers. I don't know if they've modified. No one has currently, as right now, done a legit 25. I believe it's all done via like the Hydra bug, but especially with Sorceress, but there may be certain other thresholds as you climb up that are just unknown. But if the thing is stunned for about 5 seconds, it will then go and be unstoppable. So what you can do is disengage if you want to run the Rhymet and Tybalt, which gives you way more damage, but again, your survivability go absolutely down the drain if you decide to go for it. But Glass Cannon is technically there if you want to swap with the Potent Warding. And then pretty much the same thing, we want that lucky hit chance, and we're getting all of these different fire nodes just for extra damage and extra survivability over here. So all good stuff. And then obviously running Esus. Now, I do want to mention, if you really want to min-max, it is kind of cheating in a sense, because what you're doing is you're snapshotting the game to run the Veers Mastery, and then you equip a piece of armor that has like the bonus to Veers. You snapshot this, and then you can swap to your Esus in the dungeon. There's a lot of glitches and stuff that is definitely cheating. It's definitely not meant to be in the game. I'm not going to go ahead and go over them. I don't think you'll get banned for snapshotting, but at the end of the day, it definitely is not supposed to work like this. Meaning that if you did want to do it, there might be some way where, you know, you can do a lot more of these other snapshots. There's one where, like, basically in the in-game conventional elements that can be snapshotted, but it's how a lot of people are pushing on the leaderboards right now with every single class. So if you want to do it at your own risk. But as far as the Paragon board, this is the biggest change over here. There's a massive amount of changes to the Paragon board for this update for the Ball Lightning build. So the important thing I want to go ahead and mention, if your glyph is not at level 50, you can pretty much put it in most areas. In the game, they will give you anywhere from 148 to 158 of the stats. So it doesn't really matter where you put it. However, most people at some point will eventually reach that Sigil. Well, you don't have to go to Sigil like 10, but ideally anywhere from like Sigil 8 is a pretty good area to farm, and you could eventually get that glyph to level 50. Once you get it level 50, the best board in the entire game is shown over here, where you want to put it in, because this is kind of the most frequently asked question. Slaydra, where do I put in the brand new Tears of Blood? And the Static Surge board gives you the most. It gives you the most numbers, and we actually go for the board. In other circumstances, there could be other areas where it is kind of best in slot, and the reason why I put it in quotations is because if you don't grab this, you're pretty much at the same as another board for the amount that it's giving you. And the one thing that's important is you don't need to get every single node here. You just want to grab all of the ones that give you that plus bonus stats, and you'll get 270 like, it's pretty crazy. There's nothing else that comes close to it in terms of the numbers, in terms of X multiplicative. All right, so let's go over what has actually changed, and definitely check out the notes. I put a bunch of different notes if you want to swap different pieces of gear in the note section over in the skills and gear. There's a bunch of different notes here. Definitely check that out. If you're like, hey, can I play this instead of this, feel free to comment below, but it more likely will be in that area as well. So as far as the Paragon board, on the starter board here, we're running Control. Now, you can also, instead of this, if you want to run another one, there's another one where you can run Flame Feeder. That will give you extra damage as well. And this is more consistent damage. It's more damage to burning targets, and since we're running the Fire Bolt enchant, we're going to always make the enemies on fire. Now, what Control does is it gives you way more damage. It's like 50% more on like the bonus, and then the additional bonus, it's doubled from the fire one. Now, there is a breakpoint, though, where the enemies, if they're not perma-stunned, then they will not be taking the X20. They'll be taking, instead, if you want to run the Flame Feeder, that's X10 that's always going to be active. Whereas if you stun the enemies for 5 seconds, they will then become unstoppable. But look at the gameplay. Even the Bloodseekers, we're just deleting them. Again, most people, I want to say, that are looking at build guides are not realistically going to look at doing 25s at the moment, as that's kind of a very, very difficult thing. I don't even know if people will be completing it legit. We'll have to wait and see, especially with Sorceress. Right now, the cap is around 15 that you can do. And if you can kill them fast enough, Control is absolutely the better choice. But if you are interested in pushing and min-maxing, Flame Feeder may be a better option as it's more consistent. The other option is to run Rymet as well as Tabals and wait for that cooldown where they stop becoming unstoppable, and then you go back in and then you do your damage. It's kind of up to you. It's definitely going to be something dependent on, maybe you can get some shrines and stuff, which will actually help you with damage. So first board that we're getting, obviously on the starter board, you have Control. Then we're running Enchantment Master with Adept, and we've really min-maxed. We basically just put in exactly the amount of points we need, because we need to put as many points into the Tears of Blood glyph. Then we're getting Elemental Summoner. You can see we cut a bunch of the different nodes here for the non-physical damage, which does hurt our damage from the node in Frigid Fate, where we would get the legendary node. You still get about 20 instead of getting 30 here, but at the end of the day, you will be getting more damage because the Tears of Blood is a multiplicative, and that's better than, of course, additive damage. So Elemental Summoner over here, and we're going to be putting Territorial over here. Then we're going to go up, and it's important that you go in this order because the Tears of Blood does increase these yellow nodes over here, and one of them gives you extra damage to stun enemies, and since we perma-stun, this is good. So you definitely want to put this one in the fourth board here, which is Static Surge and then Tears of Blood. And again, if your glyph is not able to reach, because at the moment my glyph is not even level 50. There's only like a very few handful of people at the moment me making this video that have a 50 Tears of Blood glyph. But if it doesn't reach there, you don't need to put the points into the other stat points. What you can do instead is go down here and put some points into more survivability, getting this extra life, extra resistances. That is going to be key for survivability because, I mean, just putting it into like extra, like with Dex and Willpower, isn't going to be necessarily as good if you don't reach the threshold. So keep that in mind as well. And then after our Static Surge, where we put in the Tears of Blood, we're going to be going back to our Elemental Summoner board with Territorial, and then we're going to go into the Ceaseless Conduit board, and we are going to be grabbing Exploit. And then towards the very end, the very last board, Frigid Fate, we're going to be getting Destruction. And the important thing with this that you do want to reach, make sure you still get Frigid Fate. We do lose, I bet, about 10% X multiplicative, but we regain it over here with all of the other bonus nodes that we're throwing in. Now, again, if you don't reach that, you can, if you want more damage, go ahead and get the non-physical, and this will increase this back to 30x. But again, depends on where you are in terms of leveling. But the important thing over here to make sure you still don't forget to grab is this Lucky Chance. It's going to keep your resources up high, which is excellent. But that's going to wrap it up as far as the build goes. We went over the Paragon and the most important change, which is basically the Paragon board that you guys want to know. Where is the update with the Tears of Blood? Where are we putting in? And it's Static Surge. When you max out 270 plus X multiplicative damage, the highest that you can get in the game, it's on this board. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up for the update as far as the Ball Lightning Sorceress build guide for the Tears of Blood for the Perma Stun. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it if you're new here and you want an update to this build or any other build guides in the future. Subscribe with the bell notification on, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.